Now, Bran, I am the React Andy. Not really. I have way too much of an arrogant ego to let somebody else's video play on my channel. But I will, however, shout out Bran's video. If you don't know who Bran is, which is kind of odd and ironic considering last week I interviewed him and did an entire video where we got to know him a little bit better, so you should probably watch that as well. He is actually a really good friend of mine, also known as the Mr. Headache. Bran does a amalgamation of 3 different things on his channel. He does match reviews, he does video reacts, and he also does Dead by Daylight commentary. And I watch every single one of his videos, if for nothing more than to support my friend. And I was watching his channel the other day, and I came across a video where he said that content creators need to be more responsible. Now, I'm going to get into everything he said in that video, but it was an interesting title to me because when I first saw it, I was like, this is actually an interesting topic, and it goes beyond Dead by Daylight, obviously, but because we're Dead by Daylight creators, we're going to stick it to just Dead by Daylight. A lot of times when it comes to content creators and their responsibilities toward the rest of the world, people often say the major thing that content creators are responsible for their communities and their communities' actions. And I don't think that's fully true, necessarily. On the one hand, content creators are responsible for their communities in a very major way in the kind of environment that they foster when they are creating content. If the content creator is negligent to speak out about certain things or condemn certain behaviors, then they're innately going to attract people who perform those certain behaviors and who do those certain things. The biggest in the real world is things like bigotry. If a content creator never speaks out against racism, queerphobia, misogyny, xenophobia, stuff like that, then they're going to inevitably fester a bunch of people in their community who are that type of way, regardless of how the creator themselves feels. If you are never seen condemning these behaviors, then you are ultimately going to be held responsible when people who are actively shown to be your fan base start acting this way. On the other hand, it's important to understand that nobody is responsible for another individual's actions. We are all people. We are all grown people, I would suspect. I don't think that there's any 5-year-olds running around, although some of you act like it. So at the end of the day, a content creator is not able to be like reach into somebody's mind and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, right? People are going to be who they're going to be regardless of content creators that they follow. However, like I said, it's important for content creators to openly condemn a lot of the behaviors that they don't want in their communities. You see how you can believe 2 things at the same time and they don't contradict each other? I actually have a history of talking about this. Now, I didn't want to bring this video up because it's long since been deleted, but I'm hoping that we can all have a civil conversation about this, so I'll try my best. A while back, I made a video called the OTS Dara Problem, and in it, I talked about how communities have a very bad tendency to hold their favorite content creators on pedestals. I talked about how people in Otz's community specifically really like to just take everything he says as kind of the holy gospel of Dead by Daylight. If Otz says that a add-on is bad, then it is bad. If Otz says that a perk is broken, then it is broken by these people's measurements. And it's never, or not necessarily like, oh, Otz brought up this point and this is why I agree with it. It was normally presented in a way as Otz said this, therefore it must be true, which was the entire point of that video. That video ended up being deleted because I was receiving multiple death threats from Otz fans who thought that I was just overly attacking their favorite creator. And by the way, I don't blame Otz for those death threats. I am fairly certain from the bottom of my heart that if Otz knew I was receiving those death threats over that video, he would have spoken out about it and told people to stop. But I ended up deleting the video because it just wasn't worth the stress, and it was a lot easier than reaching out to him and saying, hey, can you kind of like help me rein in some of the people who are speaking on your behalf, even though I know you don't agree with them. I love Otz, and I think he's a fantastic creator, but the whole point of that entire fiasco was to teach people that you should use creators' opinions to inform your own opinions, not replace your opinions with the opinions of content creators. It's important to be your own person. And that cycles us back to what I was talking about, where while a content creator should be very outspoken about the things that they condemn, it is also incredibly important to remember that no matter how much a content creator condemns things, some people are just awful people, and they'll be fans of people who don't agree with their actions and pretend and stick their fingers in their ears and go, la, 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 I can't hear you, and still be that type of person. If we bring this to the less extreme, which is what Bran was talking about, he was talking about how a lot of content creators talk in absolutes. And because they tend to talk in absolutes, and because a lot of communities tend to take their favorite content creators' opinions and use them as their own, there's a giant problem within the Dead by Daylight community of people taking subjective opinions and parading them as objective facts. Now, I disagree with Bran on a lot of the things he said. The way he was phrasing everything made it seem like he was putting that responsibility on the content creators to be a little bit more, direct, that what they're saying is their opinion and not an objective fact. And I think what's really important to remember is that talking in absolutes is just the easier way to go. Even as somebody who is autistic and regularly rambles on to try to clarify themselves to make sure that they're not misunderstood, even though I regularly am misunderstood, because after a year of creating YouTube content, I am fully convinced that the average YouTube commenter spends their spare time huffing glue and shoving their heads up their own asses rather than listening to the things that are being said to them. I do attempt to be as clear and concise as possible when I am talking. However, just like the phrase broad strokes paint the fence faster, it's very easy to remember that it's simpler to just talk in absolutes. If you start trying to drop a lot of clarifying words and sentences, they can sometimes come out clunky and unengaging, I guess. In other words, it's a lot easier to say the unknown is clunky and unfun rather than I feel like the unknown is a little bit clunky and that is mostly because of blah, 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 and he is unfun because of blah, 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 right? It's just easier to do the original. And I'm not saying that that normally excuses the way people tend to talk. Again, I am the type of person that likes to clarify myself as much as possible. But I think it's also important that just because that is what the creator is saying, it doesn't mean that the content creator is necessarily at fault for the opinion that the community might be holding in that very moment. For example, I'm working on a video right now about the 3 worst maps in the game. I am not going to clarify every 5 seconds in that video about how I feel those are the 3 worst maps in the game. Obviously, it is just my opinion on what those 3 worst maps in the game are going to be. But that does not necessarily mean that I am responsible if a bunch of knuckleheads start running around parading that those maps are the 3 worst maps objectively because I said so, and not subjectively because they tend to agree with my opinion. I also think it's very important to hold the individual responsible for the way that they interpret things, because sometimes creators can be very, very clear and very, very concise, and they will still run off with a random thing. I actually had somebody do this to me with one of Bran's videos one time, where I was talking about whether or not Dead by Daylight on the Survivor side takes skill on one of my videos, and somebody quoted Bran as saying that Dead by Daylight can't take skill because Bran himself said that Dead by Daylight doesn't take skill, and Bran never said that. The video the dude was trying to reference did not say that at fucking all, but that's still the way that he took it because people just hear what they want to hear. And so I don't really think that it's up to content creators to try to tell people, hey, form your own fucking opinion, because people don't listen. And even when they do, quote unquote, listen, they only hear. They don't listen, if that makes sense. In conclusion, I think that while Bran had a very excellent point about content creators being responsible for certain aspects, I don't think it's really their opinions on the game, so much as it's more the way content creators present their opinions about the game. I think that content creators realistically are more responsible for negativity versus positivity within the community, as opposed to opinions about whether or not something is bad or unfun or unnecessary. If you have a content creator, and we used to have one, and thankfully he quit Dead by Daylight, who does nothing every single video but lambaste the devs, then his hundreds of thousands of followers start doing the same exact thing. That is where I feel responsibility should be landed on. That is where I feel content creators need to be careful about their words. That is where I feel you need to be as clear and concise as possible. You should never be targeting or fostering harassment toward the devs or toward other content creators or other players or something like that. You should never be purporting that toxic behaviors is something that you should be doing. For example, if you have a content creator whose entire content platform is just being a whiny little bitch over and over again and calling everything toxic and hackers and cheating and all of this other stuff when it's just normal gameplay elements, then that is something that the content creator is responsible for not doing so that they don't foster and fester that kind of mindset within the community. While I agree that content creators are definitely people who have a lot of influence, that's why we're called influencers in some circles, I also believe that a lot of individuals need to learn how to think for them fucking selves and stop being sheeps. But maybe that's just me. And that's all I have for you guys today. As always, I do want to hear your opinions down in the comments below. I don't make these videos just for me to spout my opinions at you. I like to hear what you have to say as well. And as always, a very big special thank you to the channel members listed on screen now. If you want to find out how to become a channel member and get perks like seeing videos early, then please click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.